Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin, and I want to thank you for coming along on the adventure today. This is the first episode in ColoradoRailfan, the adventures thereof. And we are headed west today. We are going to go to the west slope of the Continental Divide. The goal is to primarily find the Westbound Zephyr. That's first and foremost. I have a couple of friends that are taking the Zephyr westbound today, and so I thought that I would go west and see if I could get a few pictures of their train, and I wanted to take you guys along with me to kind of see what is involved in a day of taking train pictures. I think it's going to be a good day ahead. Hopefully we can get some pictures of the Eastbound Zephyr as well. We will see where they all are. The initial goal here this morning is to head west over Berthoud Pass and to head toward Winter Park, and hopefully wait there and get some pictures of the Westbound Zephyr as it comes out of the Moffat Tunnel, and then continue west, hopefully until it comes across the Eastbound Zephyr, and then head back toward Denver that way. I am a Colorado native. I've spent my entire life around trains. I don't have any family members that have worked for the railroad, but my dad was an avid rail photographer, and he took me out to take pictures with him before I can even remember. And I spent my entire life going out, looking at trains, taking pictures of trains, mainly along what is now the Moffat Tunnel Subdivision. It was, of course, once the Denver and Rio Grande Western. That's where my heart lies, is with that railroad, which of course hasn't been around since 1988. And then the Southern Pacific took over for a few years when Rio Grande bought Southern Pacific and kept the Southern Pacific name, and then Union Pacific and Southern Pacific merged and kept the Union Pacific name in 1996, and that's the main thing that we've had here in Colorado along with BNSF for the last couple of decades. So looking forward to making this video today and taking you guys along on the journey. So go ahead, get comfortable, grab a snack, and enjoy the ride and see a day in the life of going out and taking some train pictures. Come on, let's go. It is a little after 8 o'clock in the morning, and we are on US 6 heading west out of Denver to get to the west slope of the Moffat. There's kind of two main ways that you can do that. One is to take I-70, which is obviously a little bit faster in terms of your speed, but there's a big Floyd Hill you got to go over, and it's a lot more up and down. I prefer US 6 because it's just a little more gentle, a little easier on the engine. It is 2 lanes, so it can be a little bit slower sometimes. It's kind of hit or miss. They usually end up being about the same, and I live more on the north side of Denver, so it's a little more convenient anyway to take US 6. I don't have to go quite as far south to start making my trip to the west. And as we head west here, one thing that I thought that I would mention is for anybody interested in being a train photographer, if you are an aspiring rail fan or not, then if you're not, you'll know this. One thing that you do have to plan for is to expect the unexpected. Basically, when you have a plan in mind, when you're going to go out and take train pictures, if you have a specific plan, or more specifically, if you have a specific train that you are trying to go after, like today, trying to go after the Westbound California Zephyr, you have to expect that what your plans aren't going to end up being the plans that are going to happen. Once in a while you'll luck out, and that'll be the case, but more often than not, things will change. And that's because trains are unpredictable. Even scheduled trains like Amtrak are subject to the whims of the freight railroads that they run on, and equipment breaks down, things happen, delays happen, and that's actually what we're dealing with this morning. When I went to bed last night, the Westbound Zephyr was pretty much on time. It was just a little bit late, about 15 minutes late, but not a big deal. And overnight, it lost a couple of hours in Nebraska, and it made up a little bit of that time this morning, but it's looking to be about 90 minutes late this morning, getting into Denver. And so that changed up my plan a little bit for the day. I was kind of anticipating heading west and going straight to Winter Park, going over Berthoud Pass and waiting for the Zephyr in Winter Park. But because of the delay, that's changed my plan a little bit. The eastbound Rocky Mountaineer runs from Glenwood Springs to Denver today, and it's supposed to leave Glenwood Springs somewhere between 9 and 9:30. And while I don't have enough time to actually make it to Glenwood Springs before it leaves, I'm thinking I do have time to make it to somewhere like Bond ahead of him. So my current plan, and again, I need to expect that this is going to be subject to change, but my current plan right now is to head to Bond and see if I can't wait out the Rocky Mountaineer and maybe try to head west from there. It's a little bit risky. I'm gonna have to pay really close attention to the scanner, because as I go west from Bond, there's a lot of places where I'm going to lose visibility of the tracks. There's places around Dell where I will not be able to see the tracks at all, and it will be very easy for a train, especially like the Rocky Mountaineer, to slip through there without me knowing. So hopefully they will be calling all of the signals on the scanner, and I will be hearing that on the scanner. But the exact plan is to be determined. So for the time being, we are going to continue trucking west here, US 6 to I-70, and I-70 will go up through the Eisenhower Tunnel over to the west slope of the Continental Divide, and then up over Vail Pass over to Wolcott on Tennessee Pass. Wolcott actually, of course, has not had a train in over 20 years since Tennessee Pass shut down. The tracks are still there though, and we will head north from Wolcott to get up to State Bridge near Bond, and we will evaluate our plan at that point as soon as we get there. So until then, we will keep on going and talk to you guys in a bit. Well, we are just a little bit past the town of Georgetown on I-70 westbound, and actually coming up right near the Georgetown Loop Railroad. And as you can see, our weather is starting to go downhill a little bit. This was not unexpected. We do have a little bit of a winter storm hanging out in Colorado today. The highs are only going to be probably in the 30s Fahrenheit, so just a little bit above 0 Celsius as we continue to trek west. At the moment, the roads are only wet, which is good news for sure. And it looks like it may just be rain, maybe a little bit of sleet falling. And we are continuing the climb up toward the Eisenhower Tunnel. And in to the Eisenhower Tunnel we go. For those that are not in Colorado and may not be familiar with it, the Eisenhower Tunnel was built in 1973 as a part of the interstate system, and it connects the east side of the Continental Divide with the west side of the Continental Divide here in Colorado. There's obviously other passes, Loveland Pass, Berthoud Pass, etc. that you can take, but the main corridor in Colorado for going from the east slope of the divide to the west slope of the divide is Eisenhower Tunnel. It's a little over a mile long, if I remember correctly, and we're about 11,000 feet in elevation, thereabouts. Now, fortunately, it looks very pretty outside, and fortunately, that is not being accompanied at the moment by icy roads. We're just wet at the moment, we're not sliding around, which makes me very happy, of course, as we're descending through this winter wonderland here toward the start of November. So we will check in again a little bit down the road. All right, we are about to start charging up Vail Pass. You can see Copper Mountain Ski Resort there in the background, right here at the foot of the east side of Vail Pass. And this is the last big climb that we have to make, at least for the time being. Later on, obviously, to get back home to Denver, we are going to have to get over the divide. However, since more than likely we will be following the tracks, we will probably not be going over Vail Pass, and probably not over the Eisenhower and Johnson tunnels either. Most likely we will follow the tracks back Bond to Kremling to Granby to Winter Park, and then over Berthoud Pass. And Berthoud Pass will likely be how we will get back over to join I-70 to continue back toward home. In the meantime, though, we're going to make our way up and over Vail Pass, about 10,000 feet above sea level, as soon as we get to the summit. All right, we're taking a quick stop here in West Vail, just off of I-70 at a Conoco. Need to try to clean off a few specks on the windshield. I noticed that you guys may have observed in some of the videos looking out the dash. Unfortunately, I do have a crack and I can't fix that, so sorry about that. Need to get that, probably should just get a new windshield now that I think about it at some point. And then we are going to run inside to the gas station as well, and we are going to get a few provisions. We need some snacks, some food, some water for the rest of the day, and then we will get back on the road. Hey guys, we stopped here at Tennessee Pass at Wolcott. Briefly here, you can see the rails right back here. That's the main line in the shrubs right there. And I just wanted to stop briefly to show you guys basically the state of disrepair that Tennessee Pass is in, considering it hasn't been actively used or maintained in 20 years. Walking over here to the siding a little bit, and if I look behind me, you see this tree? Do you see where that is? That is growing up right in the middle of the tracks on the siding, and this thing is gigantic. This tree here, that thing has to be 20 or more feet tall. That's 20, 25 feet tall most likely, and it is coming up right in the middle of the siding. So if anybody were ever to reopen Tennessee Pass, which is very, very, very unlikely, that just gives you a little bit of an example as to the kind of maintenance that they'd have to deal with. There's another tree down there that is not in the right of way, but it is definitely obstructing both the main and the siding a little bit. So this is just one spot on Tennessee Pass to give you an idea of what it's looking like now 20 plus years after it was last used. So sad, but it's the way it is, and we're gonna keep heading north now toward Bond. All right, guys, we are stopped here above the tracks. You can see them there in the background. We are just west of Bond, Colorado, and right near Yarmony Tunnel, 647-foot tunnel. That is just west of Bond. Basically, we're here at the east end of the Glenwood Springs Subdivision, more or less the start of the Dotsero Cutoff. And it's a little after 10:20, and I decided that this would be a good place to stop and wait for the Rocky Mountaineer. It's a great view, as you can see, so it'll make for a good shot. But a couple of factors that play into it here. I don't know for sure what time the Rocky Mountaineer left Glenwood Springs. It's a little bit, its schedule is a little bit more of a loose schedule compared to Amtrak. So it can leave anywhere between 9 and 9:30. If it left closer to 9, then I'd be very nervous about heading west at this point, because I do lose visibility of the tracks between here and Dell, a couple of places, as well as between Dell and Range, and I just don't want to take that chance. If it left closer to 9:30, I'd probably be okay, but it's not worth the risk. So I'm gonna wait it out here. All right, as you just saw, we were correct about the Rocky Mountaineer, and I'm very
107 bond up.
And I'm very glad that we did not try to go further west of Bond, because I have a very strong feeling that I would have been skunked. I didn't hear anything on the scanner before he got to Bond there. I just saw him appear from around the curve off there in the distance and got out to take the picture, and I had no other warning, at least no other audio warning until he appeared there. So I think it was a very good decision to wait there above Yarmony Tunnel, and now we are back on Colorado 131 and we are headed east. This is where the chasing part of train chasing comes in. We're going to do our best to get ahead of the Mountaineer to get some additional pictures of him. All right, we are right near State Bridge. You can see it in the background here, just east of Bond, waiting on a great curve along the Colorado River for the Mountaineer, who should be here momentarily. I had intended to bring my tripod so that I could set up my phone to actually get video of some of this stuff and not just have to mount it on the dash, and I can't mount it on the dash. You wouldn't be able to see me for this shot, but of course that was the one thing I forgot at home today, was my tripod. We made one more stop just east of Yarmony. Don't know if we'll be able to spin this around well enough, but the Mountaineer is just heading away from us down along the Colorado River. We're going to lose sight of the tracks here. The tracks are going to curve back to Radium, and there is a road that goes into Radium, but that is another one of those kind of crapshoot situations, because I think I could beat him to Radium. I definitely could have if I hadn't stopped at Yarmony. I could have beaten him to Radium, but then getting back out of Radium and getting ahead of him again before getting to a place known as Inspiration Point, where you lose him in Gore Canyon, and then getting ahead of him even by the time he gets over to Kremling, all of that can be a challenge, and there's no guarantees. So I typically just go right past Radium unless I'm only planning to make that the one shot of the day, which is not the case for today. So we are going to pass Radium, and we are going to keep heading toward Little Gore Canyon and Inspiration Point, and to see where we're headed from there. For those of you that are familiar with the former Rio Grande and along the Moffat, will probably recognize from that last time lapse that we blew right past Inspiration Point, which is a place that we had discussed stopping at, which happens to be, it's right near Gore Canyon. It's the west end basically of Gore Canyon, and that's because after giving it some thought, once again, plans have changed. And we are still chasing the Rocky Mountaineer, but I am also wanting to get my friends on the California Zephyr. And if I waited at Inspiration Point, it would be hard to catch the Rocky Mountaineer again before Kremling, and then really probably before Byers Canyon and Sulphur. It would make it tough to catch up, because passenger trains between Kremling and Byers Canyon can actually get up close to 70 miles an hour, and that makes it really hard to chase them and get ahead of them. So after thinking about that, I decided that the best bet was to forego Inspiration Point, and for right now just focus on getting ahead of the Mountaineer, get over to Kremling, and then get ahead of him. And I don't know for sure where we're going to stop. We may try to get a shot in Kremling. We may just go all the way toward Byers Canyon, somewhere in between. Don't really know for sure yet. All right, we are in Kremling, and we are definitely ahead of the Mountaineer, and we are going to make a quick stop here at the gas station to fill up. We got about a half a tank, but Kremling is one of the places where we do have the opportunity to get gas. We're kind of out in the middle of nowhere for a lot of these shots west of the Divide. Don't even have cell reception in a lot of those places. So we got cell reception right now. Check in with the wife. We've got a gas station, so we're gonna fill up really quick, and then we're gonna keep heading east. Well, that is the side effect of driving on a muddy dirt road in the Colorado high country when it's not even snowing but raining. We are filled up. We got a full tank of gas once again, and we are heading east again. We are just coming up to the siding of Troublesome. You might be able to catch the signal off to the right there by through the windshield wipers. This is it's kind of an interesting story of something that happened a long time ago. I believe it was in the 1950s here at Troublesome. Back in the days of the Rio Grande, there was an eastbound train that had left Bond before sunrise, and the train got here to Troublesome just after sunrise, and there were, I believe, 4 or 5 crewmen on board back in those days. And at the time, there were 2 guys in the cab. There was the engineer and a brakeman were in the cab, and they were talking, and apparently they got distracted when they were talking, and they somehow missed a yellow signal, totally on accident. They were both very experienced. They were just deep in conversation and happened to miss a yellow signal. And it was because they were meeting a westbound train that was coming the other direction. It was the first signal that they had encountered that wasn't green since leaving Bond, and they just missed it. And they got to the east end of the siding of Troublesome, and the westbound train that they were meeting was going into the siding already, and it was over the switch. And by the time the crew saw and realized what was happening, saw the train that they were meeting in the siding and knew they had a red at the west end, or the east end, excuse me, they immediately put the train into emergency in an effort to stop, obviously, but it was just not enough time. Trains do not stop on a dime. It takes quite a while for them to slow down and come to a stop. And the train went through the red and sideswiped the westbound train that it was meeting. And Rio Grande used that as an opportunity to actually create a training video for employees on safety, and they actually named it The Trouble at Troublesome. If I believe it's on YouTube, or at least it has been in the past. If I can find it, I'll put a link in the description of this video. It's a really fascinating training video to watch. They kind of reenacted the collision and whatnot. It's kind of cool seeing a lot of the video from shooting out of the cab of an F unit from way back then, and some of the rolling stock and all that stuff is quite interesting. So if I can find it on YouTube, I'll put a link in the description. It's definitely worth a watch. It's quite interesting. And in the meantime, we are continuing to head east. We stopped for gas in Kremling. We got a full tank now, and I am fairly certain that we are ahead of the Mountaineer. Although I could not see the tracks from the gas station, and I did hear the scanner chirp a little bit, but while I was out getting gas, I couldn't hear what was said. So I'm really hoping that it did not say that it was the Mountaineer highballing Kremling, and that he actually slipped past us. So I'm not 100% sure at this point if he's ahead of us, if we're ahead of him, but we're going to keep heading east toward Byers Canyon and probably reevaluate as soon as we get there. All right, I decided that I would try and stick it out here in Byers Canyon to see if we're going to see the Rocky Mountaineer first, or if we're going to see the California Zephyr first. The Mountaineer is definitely to the west, and he may go into the siding of Flat to wait on the Zephyr, or the dispatcher might try to take him to Sulphur, which is on the east side of Byers Canyon, and then the Zephyr is just west of Granby. Just made its station stop in Granby. I was able to check the Amtrak tracing website online. I have enough cell reception here to do that. Speaking of which, if you have not used that website before to check on the status of Amtrak trains, I will definitely link that in the description of this video. It's a very useful tool, especially if Amtrak is the thing that you are trying to find, which today it largely is. Nothing like that for the Rocky Mountaineer, so we're kind of in the blind on that one, but the Zephyr is out of Granby. Well, the Zephyr did indeed get to the priority, as you can see. The Mountaineer is most likely holding over at flat. So let's start heading back west here and chase this Zephyr. Let this play in regular time here through Byers Canyon, as Byers Canyon is just a pretty cool canyon. We are pretty much at the west end though. So I'm trying to decide what I want to do from here. Because, as I mentioned earlier, between Byers Canyon and Kremling, Amtrak is going to be able to get up to about 70, and he is kind of my priority at this point. He's the train that I want to be chasing, and not the Mountaineer. And if I want to have a decent shot at getting ahead of him, especially in this less than ideal weather, then I am probably going to want to at least get over to Inspiration Point on the west side of Gore Canyon ahead of him, because if I linger around too long here in this stretch of track where Amtrak can go pretty fast, that could really come back to bite me. He could easily get ahead of me, and that wouldn't be great for the day. So we're going to probably just leave Amtrak in the dust for a little while and try and make our way back over to Inspiration Point.
Yeah, former to Woody for Montaño was Fraser and clear. And alright, everyone's gonna be clear. Give you a little bell and whistle. Looks like we got a new slide fence in there too, so we're good to go. Those couple of rocks are there. Alright, appreciate it. Yeah, this weather brings them all down. I appreciate that.
And I may...
Track 5 point Kremling.
Shoot, yep. Gosh, yeah, that's that problem.
Go ahead, and we did have a slide that got trimmed in, so 106.7.
Okay. That may work to our advantage. I know that you may not have been able to hear that clearly on our scanner there. As is often the case through that 70-mile-an-hour zone, Amtrak just flies, and we can't go that fast. We can only go 65 on US 40, and through Kremling we have to slow down to 35 and even less to loop our way through town. So Amtrak was able to actually get ahead of us when we crossed that bridge there. I was thinking we may still be a little bit ahead of him, but that was incorrect. He did get past us at Kremling. The good news is, that might work to our advantage at least, and I don't know if it came through clearly in the recording from the scanner, is that a slide fence apparently was tripped in Gore Canyon. And if you're not familiar with a slide fence, there are wires that are strung along the side of the track on the whichever side the rocks are on in a lot of canyons, and they are wires that are spaced every foot or so apart, and they go up along one side of the rails, whatever side again that the mountain is on, and then they usually loop over the top of the rails as well, higher obviously than the height of any train that would come through there. And the wires are designed to stop smaller rocks if possible, but larger rocks that are not going to be able to be stopped by those wires and can actually break through the wires, when those wires are broken or come unplugged from the pole that they're connected to, if and when that happens, it activates what's called a slide fence. And that basically means that the block signals around that slide fence automatically drop to red to protect the train, and the dispatcher is notified. And in many cases, there's even an audible recording that is occasionally announced over the scanner, over the radio, so that any trains in the vicinity can hear it and are aware of it, just in case the rock that fell is large enough to be a potential problem for trains coming through, that it would need to be moved before a train can pass through. Most of the time it tends to be smaller rocks that just happen to catch the wire and detach to the wire, and it activates that slide fence, but not always. Sometimes it can be larger ones. So The bottom line for us, at least for the Zephyr, is that because a slide fence was activated, that is going to slow down Amtrak a little bit. He's going to have to go through Gore Canyon through that area at restricted speed. He's going to have to be ready to stop in case there is something in the way, and hopefully that's going to give us the time that we need to get over to Inspiration Point ahead of him. All right, it looks like our guess paid off. It looks like Amtrak was indeed held up a bit in Gore Canyon. We've made it to Inspiration Point ahead of them, and we're going to be ready to get a few pictures. Now, if you are not familiar with this part of the Moffat Tunnel subdivision, the former Rio Grande, and you're wondering, okay, why Inspiration Point? If I do a little turning around here, you will see that we are pretty high up on the mountain face here, and we got the Colorado River right down here, and then we've got the tracks coming out of Gore Canyon right there. Right here, this is Tunnel 38, and if we keep rotating around, we can continue to see the tracks, and we will look west. Over here is the siding of Azure. Actually, I think it's a little further down here is the siding of Azure, and the tracks continue west all the way through this fantastic valley along the Colorado River, heading back toward Little Gore Canyon and then ending up over toward Radium. So it's a fantastic spot for both eastbounds or westbounds. Very, very popular place to come and take some shots. And if you look right here, I mean, it's pretty great too. You're right on the edge looking down there to the Colorado River. So definitely be cautious, but it's a great place to hang out and wait for trains. All right, there is the Zephyr. We got ahead of him as we hoped to, and he is now making his way around and into Azure. He's got a clear signal at Azure, highball, so he's going to keep moving west, and we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get in the car, and we are going to go after him, try to get ahead of him, see if we can't get another shot a little ways down the rails. We got a shot at Yarmony, and we are now alongside the train. Kind of hard to see. We got some train in the way. You can just barely, I think, catch the tail end there coming through part of Yarmony at the west switch. And Amtrak is the tracks are now going to leave us, going to head over and following the river.
Milepost 125.0.
I think I'm going to skip over Bond and head on to the Dotsero Cutoff and see if there's a good place somewhere between Bond and Dell maybe to pull over and get a shot. So that's the plan for the next place that we're going to pick up the Zephyr. All right, this is the last signal. Hopefully you can see it over there. It's a green signal, the last signal before Dell. We're going to be crossing the tracks here, and we are going to be losing sight of the tracks as they head off toward Dell, which is in a canyon along the river. We're going to go up kind of on top of the plateau next to the canyon. So right up here at this curve you see coming up, we're going to take a left here, and the tracks are going to keep going straight. So that's it. We're not going to be able to see the tracks for a while until the other side of Dell siding. But the fact that that last signal back there was green indicates that the Zephyr will not be stopping at Dell. All right, we've made it to the location I wanted to make it to here, where the tracks cross over the river, and it is actually nice enough, it is not raining, that we're going to try and launch the drone right now, and not a moment too soon, because Amtrak is right here.
Maximum flight altitude reached.
So I'm going to sit with you guys right here in the car.
Please check it on the map.
All right, yeah, that didn't go as well as I had hoped. Amtrak caught up to us a little faster than I thought that he was going to. I thought we had a little bit bigger lead on him. And when I pulled over there where the tracks cross the river and I was working on getting set up, I was debating whether or not I wanted to launch the drone, and then decided I did, and went back to get the drone out, and I just took a little too much time in all of that. I heard a detector go off really close to me, and I knew I had very little time, so I tried to get the drone up in the air as quickly as I possibly could, and I could at that point already see Amtrak coming. So I was pretty much out of time. I just didn't have time to position the drone where I wanted it. So I got a little clip of it crossing the bridge, and even then the exposure got screwed up at one point too. So it is what it is. You know, that typically comes with a day of going out and taking pictures, is things don't always go your way, and you can't let it bug you. You can't get mad at it. You have to just write it off and say, well, better luck next time. I'll try to plan better next time and move on and try to get that next shot. All right, guys, sometimes out here things happen really fast. Sometimes it's hurry up and wait, and then at other times it is, I really wish that they would slow down a little bit, because things developed very quickly. Westbound Zephyr did indeed take the sighting at range as we were anticipating, and the dispatcher set up actually what was a really good meet, because number 6, the Eastbound Zephyr, was very close by. Neither train even had to come to a complete stop. Number 5 just rolled west through the siding at about, I don't know, 20 miles an hour probably, and the Eastbound Zephyr, he came through at track speed close to 45 miles an hour. And fortunately I did have enough time. I was able to get the drone up. It wasn't raining, and I think I got some nice coverage of the meet between the two Zephyrs there at range. And as soon as we got the drone back to us, we turned around and we are now heading back east, going to try to catch the Eastbound Zephyr, and that's going to be a little bit of a task. We may not catch up to him along the Dotsero Cutoff, just because of there's several places where we need to slow down. The little tiny, if you blink you miss it, town of Burns and McCoy. There's a few places like that where you gotta slow down, and the road actually does take a little bit more of a circuitous route along the river here. The rails have a few places where they have cuts and can go just a little bit more direct, and so for those reasons it's going to be tough catching up to number 6, at least before Bond or so. But that's the only other train that we know of that's out here, and that's our best bet for getting some more shots. So that's where we are headed. All right, everybody, we are coming back up to the tracks east of Dell, and we're gonna see if that helped us out at all. And I can see a block signal just up ahead here. This intermediate is red, so we are still behind. However, before, when we were west of Dell, the signals were yellow, so we've caught up about a block, it looks like. If we were still 2 blocks behind, that intermediate right there would have gone to yellow. So the fact that it is red, that is good. We've made up a little bit of time, but we've not made up enough time yet. So he's somewhere in this block, probably closer to the east end. We'll see if we're going to be able to catch up to him. Dotsero Cutoff is a stretch of track that runs from Bond over to Dotsero, and it's the newest stretch of track on the former Rio Grande, or at least the newest major stretch of track. Yeah, you know, more than just a siding being extended or a second main track being added, something like that. With the possible exception, I suppose, of the relocation of the tracks in Thistle, Utah, after a mudslide there in 1983, the tracks had to be relocated, and that was about 6 or 7 miles of track that got relocated onto a new grade. But other than that, the Dotsero Cutoff is the newest significant piece of track on the former Rio Grande, and it is almost 100 years old. It connected the original Denver and Salt Lake Railroad, which is what leaves west out of Denver. It's what actually ultimately runs through the Moffat Tunnel. The Denver and Salt Lake was David Moffat's railroad. It originally went over Rawlins Pass. Unfortunately, David Moffat didn't live to see the Moffat Tunnel built, although that was a dream of his, and it obviously did ultimately happen, but he died before he had the chance to see it. And the original Denver and Salt Lake made it as far as Craig, Colorado, in northwest Colorado. It went through Bond and then up what is now the Craig branch through Steamboat Springs and over to Craig. And that was as far west as the Denver and Salt Lake ever made it. The original Denver and Rio Grande Western, although it was not originally named that, it went through a lot of various name iterations, but the original railroad started in Denver, went south to Pueblo, and then west over Tennessee Pass, passed through Dotsero and continued west to Glenwood Springs, Grand Junction, and on to Salt Lake City. And in the early 20th century, Denver and Salt Lake went into bankruptcy, and the Denver and Rio Grande Western ultimately bought the Denver and Salt Lake and acquired it and absorbed it. And during that whole process and that time, some land was surveyed to be able to connect the Denver and Salt Lake and the Denver and Rio Grande Western. And the eastern point of that was Bond, also known as Oristad, which cleverly is Dotsero spelled backward. And the west end was Dotsero, and which is where kind of the west end of Tennessee Pass. And that connection of 30 or so miles was built, and it allowed for a much faster route for trains going west out of Denver to get to Salt Lake and the west coast or wherever they may be going. Instead of having to go south through Pueblo and then over Tennessee Pass, they could now just go west of Denver and over the Moffat and then along the Dotsero Cutoff over to the original Denver and Rio Grande Western and continue west that way, or east if you were coming from Utah and Salt Lake. And it became the main line through the Rockies for Rio Grande for the rest of the 20th century. And then, of course, at the very end of the 20th century, when Southern Pacific became the main railroad after Rio Grande bought it, and then Union Pacific and Southern Pacific merged, and the Union Pacific name was kept. In 1997, Union Pacific determined that Tennessee Pass was enough of a superfluous route and a very expensive route to maintain that they went ahead and rail banked it. They basically put it into storage. So the tracks are still there, but they haven't been maintained since August of 1997. So it's been close to 25 years now since there was actually a train over Tennessee Pass or anything that was maintained. And that goes back to earlier what we saw there at Wolcott with that tree growing in the middle of the siding and along the right of way for both the main and the siding. So that's just a little bit of history for those that may not have known it, a little bit about the Dotsero Cutoff, where it got its name, why it's called that. And yeah, so there's two sidings on the Dotsero Cutoff, the siding of Range and the siding of Dell. You heard me talking about both of those earlier. And we have a train coming down on the Craig branch. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see that. It's probably the Phippsburg local coming down off of the Craig branch. And that is pretty cool. Pretty lucky, actually. There's very little that happens on the Craig branch these days. So for us to happen to catch that, let's be quiet here and listen to the horn. Well, that was not something I was expecting to see. Trains on the Craig branch are so incredibly rare these days, so few and far between. I definitely did not expect to come around the turn and see a whole bunch of covered hoppers coming down. These cars probably came from somewhere out near Craig, which we were just talking about, and will probably be picked up by, well, depending where they're going, they're probably going east, so they'll probably be picked up by the Grand Junction to North Yard manifest the next time it comes here through Bond. So that was a cool little diversion. I don't think there's much that we can do with it. If I had more time, or if I thought it was going to do something, you know, of a little more interest, I'd stick around, but he's probably just going to head down to Bond and just basically drop off those cars at Bond, and he might pick up a car or two. I don't know what's down there at Bond, and then either return with a car or two, or even just return with light power back up to Phippsburg. But still, that was kind of cool being able to see anything at all running on the Craig branch, even if it was just momentarily. But that actually illustrated that used to be the main line for the Denver and Salt Lake, where we just saw that UP train with those covered hoppers. That used to be the main line, and now of course that's just a branch line running up to Steamboat and Craig that sees very little in the way of action. And the Dotsero Cutoff is now a part of the primary Union Pacific main line, making up the beginning of the Glenwood Springs Subdivision as you head west. And that is just a little history on all that I thought would be interesting. So in the meantime, we are going to continue to head east to see when we can catch the Zephyr. We got dinged briefly by that manifest, stopped at the grade crossing. It wasn't for too terribly long, so I don't think it's going to be a real big deal, but we're going to keep plowing east and see when we can get caught up to the Zephyr. We are just about caught up to the eastbound Zephyr here. So close, we're just going to see the tail end of him as we are leaving Yarmony, which is unfortunate because our next opportunity really to get pictures of him is going to be over near Inspiration Point, in that general area between Little Gore and Inspiration Point. And especially with the weather kind of being crummy today, I don't really feel like hiking into the place I would need to be in order to get shots in Little Gore. I guess if it's not raining, I will consider sending just the drone over, and I will stay closer to the road so I don't have to worry about getting really wet or slipping in the mud or anything. We will see, but we have made it. At least we've caught back up to the Zephyr, which is over there now, and leaving us to head toward Radium as we go up and over the top. So good luck on your continued journey east there, number 6. We will see you a little bit further down the line. Alright guys, we made it to Inspiration Point, and we're well ahead of the Zephyr now. What I think I'm going to try and do is launch the drone and send it a little ways into Gore Canyon right back in here. I haven't done that before, and the weather is quite nice right now, so I think that might work. Now, where it's going to bite me, and you guys can say I told you so, is if that slide fence has been fixed in Gore Canyon, then the Zephyr may slip right through there, and it will be really hard to catch up to him again. So we'll see, but it's not always about quantity. Sometimes it's about quality, and I feel like this is going to be a quality shot that I want to take advantage of, and if that means I have fewer shots, then so be it. That's the way it goes. I think it's going to be worth trying to at least get the shot. I also just heard on the scanner there is a Westbound. I did not catch what it is. It's probably a BNSF manifest, but I don't know for sure. A Westbound that is coming up to Flat, and it's probably going to end up meeting the Zephyr at, hold on a second, we'll wait for that guy to pass us. The Westbound is probably going to meet the Zephyr at Troublesome or Kremling, it sounds like, based on what was on the scanner. So that is something else that we can look for as well. But for now, we're going to get ready to launch the drone and be ready to try to get a shot of the Zephyr coming into the west end of Gore Canyon. Well, I am pretty psyched. I think that the shots there from Inspiration Point of the Eastbound Zephyr are going to prove to be the shots of the day. I don't know for sure, but I'm really happy with my decision to actually fly into Gore Canyon a little ways with the drone and get some shots of the Eastbound Zephyr. Got some shots of him coming out of the tunnel there, Tunnel 38, and I'm really excited to see the results. And I think that, like I said, I think that is probably going to end up being the shots of the day right there. Now we're going to continue east and see if we can catch up to the Zephyr, or when we can catch up to the Zephyr. So we've reached the point in the day that often happens, well, always happens for everybody eventually, the point of the day where I need to be thinking about heading home, and I can't really be turning around and chasing anything west, sadly. So whatever this westbound is here at Troublesome, I am going to have to just let it go. We'll see if we can see what it is as we drive by. It's just a little after 4 p.m. and I need to make sure I'm home by 7 p.m. and possibly a little earlier than that. And it's going to be pushing it if I don't just start making my way back toward home. All right, here we go. Here's our westbound. Oh, all right, and it looks like we actually have a UP coal train coming out of the siding here at Troublesome, I do believe. So, here's the good news. By putting the meat here at Troublesome, this coal train was too long to fit between the switches at Troublesome, and the Zephyr got stuck at the east end briefly for the meat to be able to happen. So that is going to allow us to get ahead of the Zephyr up here, and we'll set up for another shot. Probably, we'll see what we can do maybe in Byers Canyon, just a little bit up ahead. Well, unfortunately, the rain picked up a bit when we got to Byers Canyon, and it was coming down enough I didn't really feel like taking the DSLR out, my Canon 6D. I didn't really feel like taking it out. I don't really have anything to protect it from the rain, and it was coming down hard enough that I didn't want to chance it, and it was definitely too hard for launching the drone. So we are continuing east right now on US 40, heading toward Granby, the Zephyr's next station stop. We're well ahead of it now thanks to Byers Canyon, and since we didn't stop, we've got a very good lead on the Zephyr at the moment, and just trying to figure out where might be another good location to stop and get a shot. Might do it somewhere along here in between Sulphur and Granby. The rain has mostly stopped. If anything, it's just a real light sprinkle, and in fact it's starting to clear up outside. It's kind of nice. You definitely can see some blue sky at the moment. Our next stop here is just a little bit west of Granby, closer to Granby than it is to Sulphur. You can see the red intermediate down there. That is because the Zephyr is aligned in the opposite direction, coming toward us. And we're gonna wait for him to show up here and then hop out and take a few pictures, and this should be a pretty decent video. The dash magnet is actually pointing us in the right direction to hopefully get a nice video of Amtrak coming by.
UP detector, milepost 79.9.
We got ahead of the Zephyr again, guys, thanks to the station stop at Granby. Kind of expected that would be the case. We are barely ahead of it. It left Granby pretty much at the same time we did, because the Granby station stop is usually a very brief stop. A lot of the time, only 1 or 2 people, if that, will get on or off the train. And I have definitely seen the train before where it basically comes to a complete stop, verifies that there's nobody standing on the platform, and just says, all right, we can highball, we can keep pulling. And it looked like that was probably pretty much what happened today. I'm not even sure if there were any passengers that got on or got off. So the whole station stop only took a matter of like 30 seconds or something. But that's okay. The 30 seconds was enough when you take into consideration slowing and stopping and starting and everything. And the train is now going through Fraser Canyon, out of sight from where we are. We're on US 40, making our way toward Tabernash, and we will probably head toward Fraser for the next stop, or we may just head straight down to the west portal of the Moffat Tunnel and get a picture of it before it disappears into the tunnel. Have to play it by ear and kind of see how things go as we get a little bit closer. All right, well, I made a stop at Wendy's because I was really needing something other than just beef jerky and Cheetos. And we have got the Zephyr back here making its station stop, and it's getting ready to go, it sounds like, so we better get out of here. And we got a clear signal back that way, so we're gonna get rolling. Hey everybody, just getting a last shot here of the Zephyr as it dives into the Moffat Tunnel, and it gets to take the short 6-mile journey to the other side of the divide, and we of course get to take the much longer Berthoud Pass journey to get back over to the other side. So with the Zephyr now gone into the tunnel, there's not much else we can do. Sunset is in less than an hour, so that's probably going to be about it for this initial entry in the vlog. All right, guys. All right. After that. All right. Well, all right. It looks like. All right, guys. All right. We got a shot. All right. Yeah. All right, guys. All right, guys. All right, guys. All right, guys. All right. Well, And speaking of the snacks, the beef jerky and the Cheetos and the Cheetos. That's not Cheetos. That's beef jerky. Dude, cut. 3:34 p.m. at Inspiration Point. We may use this one, or we may use one that we film outside of the car. I don't know if we're going to use that. What is this guy doing? Okay. All right. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a rainstorm, a pretty major. I mean, it. What am I even trying to say? Pretty major what? Pretty major rainstorm. It wasn't that major. Come on, man, get it together. Cut.